afternoon.
As soon as I call, it's like an hour.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the, whatever this is, February 28th Council Work Session. And we have a couple of very interesting items. I'm very eager to hear the first one. People are all abuzz about turkeys this end of the table. So, Manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Maybe we'll all become buzzed by it soon. But I'll turn over to Denny and Lindsay to take us through this conversation.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Denny Groh, Planning and Development. Yes, we are here to talk about turkeys, rats, potentially nutria now too as well. We were thinking of branding this as Wildlife Appreciation Work Session, but I don't think the appreciation is necessarily where we're going. But so we were here, Sarah Maderi and I were here in December right before break, and we provided a little bit of an update on specifically the rat issue. And so we did say we were going to come back with some more information. So that's part of our purpose today. And Lindsay and I will give you kind of a little bit of an update kind of on some of the things that we're working on. There's also been a lot of noise related to turkeys, literally and figuratively. And so we're going to kind of weave in a little bit of a conversation around turkeys. Planning and development, actually, we like to think of ourselves as being a very well-rounded department, but we actually don't know a lot about turkeys. But so we have Christopher Yee here. He's from the State Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we thought we'd bring him to the table and share maybe a little bit in-depth, have a little bit more in-depth discussion about turkeys, what we know, what other cities are and how they're dealing with it and so forth. So that'll come kind of later in the program, but we're just going to start with rats, and then we'll jump into turkeys, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions and conversations. And last time we were here, we talked about the rat issue, and we came at it from the context of it really requires a comprehensive plan. There's no single solution that we really can identify. And then from our perspective, there's kind of a three-pronged solution path around enforcement, education, and programming, and then what we do with within our public infrastructure. Those are kind of the three places we feel like we have some opportunities to make some progress. And we believe that kind of the programming education is maybe the most effective strategy, but all of them are important. We talked about the primary role that we play on private property, as you know, the rat issue is really a big part of it happens on the private properties. And it's really a combination of enforcement and education, really assessing the cause of the increased population, changing behaviors, and ultimately changing the habitats for rats. On the enforcement side, we talked about some of the things that are going on around, for example, downtown. We're paying close attention to how people are storing their garbage, disposing of their grease, and sometimes that comes to an enforcement level. Some of it has to do just with conversations we're having in education. In the neighborhoods, that issue is kind of complaint driven. We do go out when these things arise in the neighborhoods. Rochelle Nicholas is here from Planning and Development, and if we have questions about enforcement later on, she would be here to answer those. We talked about some program areas. Curbside recycling is a good example. We've piloted that program. We hope next year that we would go citywide with that program. That's an opportunity to get certain food items out of compost piles and get them in enclosed containers. And some of those programmatic fixes, I think, are it's possible they'll be effective. And that also gives us an opportunity to distribute educational information as we're rolling out the program. We can also couple that with curbside recycling and rats and how people deal with this issue. We also do targeted outreach about composting. We have education programs, and we're trying to weave in education about rats and how these things overlap and so forth, and urban animal keeping and all those things. There's education opportunities with those programs as well. We've also looked at the code around urban animal farming and rats and so forth. We don't really see that there's a necessary code fixed here, so we're kind of more focused on education, programming, what we do in the public space. On the public infrastructure side, Public Works gets questions, or there were questions last time about what is Public Works doing around infrastructure and sewer lines and those kinds of things. Public Works, and we get calls from community members, and they see rats that are near sewer lines and those kinds of things. Staff will investigate if there's signs of rats. They'll bait. The current practice is they'll bait the sewer lines in locations. They'll go back and check those baited locations. If they haven't been baited already, they would consider baiting. We have Public Works staff here, Josh Colley. So if you have questions about what's happening in the on the public side, the public infrastructure side, he would be here to answer some questions. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay Seltzer, and she can talk about, in addition to these things that we're kind of doing, what are some other things that are kind of in play and around education and so forth. So.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Denny. As Denny said, I'm Lindsay Seltzer in Planning and Development. I have to say that over and over so I get used to it. I came from Public Works the last 10 years. So in addition to the work that we are going to continue to do around rats, we are developing education and outreach program to help raise awareness and change the behaviors that are contributing to the rat problem in our community. I do want to let you know that since the last time we met with you all, we had a chance to meet with Lane County Public Health and the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Ludke, and their Public Information Officer as well. And they are absolutely committed to partnering with us in our rat prevention and control efforts. And they are actually going to be providing some resources for those efforts. So we really appreciate that. They also let us know that we are not in a public health crisis around these issues as of yet. They would say they classify it as a public health nuisance. It is a serious public health issue, so they're going to continue watching it and tracking it along with us. They do track for diseases related to rats and rodents, and they have not seen any increases or incidences of those diseases thus far. Just so you know, those diseases are hantavirus, leptospirosis, bubonic plague, and rat bite fever. And he actually, Dr. Ludke had actually reached out to some of the veterinarians in town even to see if animals were experiencing bites, and he didn't hear anything about that so far. So that's all good news. That means that we are at a place where we can still make some good progress, I think. So around the education piece and behavior change, we've created a comprehensive communication plan that is going to guide how we get this messaging out over at least the next 6 months is where we're really focusing right now. We have a web page that's now live on our city website. It's eugene-or.gov/rats. You have that on your brochure in front of you as well. So that just is a compilation of information, tips, go-to resources, just a place where people can go and get the information that they need easily. We've also been working with an extremely committed group of volunteers from the Friendly Area Neighbors. I just want to give a big shout out to these folks. They call themselves the RAT team, the Rodent Action Team, and they've been doing hundreds of hours of work over the last year on this education just in their neighborhood. So I really want to thank them for that work. The decision tree you see in front of you, it's also inside the brochure, is something that they thought up and put together with input from the government agencies that are listed on it. So we worked with them on that, but that was really something they put together. They've been working on various other ways to do outreach in their neighborhood, including like YouTube videos of how to rat-proof your chicken coop and compost piles. So we'll help promote those. And then as you see the brochure, we're creating other materials as well that we'll be able to give to neighborhood associations and other community groups to help them with their outreach. We're really looking to leverage the outreach that's already happening in the community. We have so many groups that are doing this work. We just want to augment what's already happening and support them in any way we can. So for example, creating text for articles in newsletters that are going out, creating postcard artwork so that those neighborhood associations can take that, and if they have excess budget in their outreach budgets, they can just create that, send it in, and get that mailed out to all their folks. As Denny said, we contract with the OSU Extension Services. Yes, that's right. Extension Services for composting classes. And so we're going to help ramp up the promotion of those so that more people know that they would be able to take those classes. Working with local businesses to help inform our community at the time of purchase. So for example, when it's baby chick season and people are starting to go out and buy those new chicks or the materials for the chicken coops or composting, at the time of purchase, we would have worked with those businesses to either have the brochures or some sort of other information available to folks. The person who owns Eugene Backyard Farmer is already stepping up in a really big way. I know he's come before you and let you know that, but he has like a large banner in his store and a display of rat proofing for chicken coops, and he's really interested. I actually spoke with him this morning about doing some classes or demos that we can help promote as well. We'll be looking at purchasing advertising and social media, even potentially some local movie theaters, creating potentially a video PSA or radio PSA to do some more outreach and awareness raising. And then we are also looking into purchasing a limited number of rat traps that we could use as part of a targeted effort to do some outreach. So potentially through our code compliance, folks who are already out in the field. But it's just a really cost-effective way for us to provide a little bit of help to folks. And then lastly, an important piece of this is going to be tracking and evaluating our progress. Is this something that we're moving the dial on at all? And so we've got Lane County Public Health committed to tracking their complaints and sightings at food-related businesses. They're already out there doing inspections already, so they've already begun that. Public Works tracks the complaints that they get in. I think you saw a map from them at the previous time in December when we were here. And we're also looking at ways and considering ways that we can better track other complaints that come into the city. And then lastly, we're working with the same neighborhood leaders in Friendly area. They've created an app that you would be able to use on your phone to report rat sightings. And so we're trying to figure out how we might be able to use that data, what sorts of data inputs would be useful for our tracking. So that's where we're at and what we're doing so far around rats. I feel pretty good about our momentum. And then I kind of want to just segue into our other issue of growing concern, which is turkeys. That has been coming up more and more as I've been attending these meetings. I've heard a couple of you bring it up, and we're seeing it in emails and phone calls, and I know that you all have probably been getting some of those comments as well. I've actually found records of wild turkey concerns back in 2007 here in Eugene in the Southwest Hills, so I know this isn't something new. So we hear reports of turkeys across the city, in particular in the South Hills, Southeast and Southwest Hills. Apparently there are some super flocks, I've learned, in the Southwest Hills that can have up to 100 birds in the flock. So that's quite a bit of turkey in one place. We all know that there are turkeys downtown. Apparently we had an incident this morning. And our regional biologist with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife estimated that there could be close to 600 or 700 birds in Eugene right now.
More than that.
The main issues and concerns related to wild turkeys are property damage, particularly vehicles and landscaping, the noise that comes along with them, either getting up into their nests in the trees or landing on roofs, and then nuisance or aggressive birds. So those are kind of the main things that we hear. And then at this point, we actually want to call Christopher Yee up to the table. He's our the acting district biologist with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Services, and he's here to just answer questions related to turkeys. And I thought maybe he could start out with just a brief, why are these birds in our city? Maybe what can be done and what is ODFW's role?
Excellent, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. The turkeys were unfortunately originally brought into Oregon by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife as early as in the 90s. So I'm hoping I don't get hit in the back of the head with something here. But the original intent was they're a very popular game bird There's national attention and organizations for turkeys, so they're very popular. They were intended to be put into places where they would not be in conflict with people. Unfortunately, turkeys don't always stay put. They can move great distances. And there's a lot of people who really like turkeys who captured them illegally and moved them to their little place where they wanted turkeys to be. And the turkeys, of course, did not necessarily stay there. And then as the population began growing, when turkeys got into areas where you didn't have access to hunting or inside of city limits where it's prohibited, the populations grew unchecked. And that brings us to where we are now. Now, turkeys as a species, they're a hit and run feeder. They tend to get all the easy food and then they move on. And so they'll make circuits over a several acre area, 2 to 4 acre area. In a natural setting, you won't see them, but maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks. The flock size is going to be fairly small unless you're in ideal turkey habitat. These flocks of 20, 30, 40 birds, you'd be hard pressed to find in a natural setting. But when they get into town and they have access to food, which is what drives most wildlife issues, including the turkey issue, they don't have to search for food. They can get up in the morning, go to a place where they're guaranteed getting food, mill around for the rest of the day being destructive, and then fly up into a roost tree at night or onto someone's roof to spend the night, and then they come right back down and repeat. You couple that with their reproductive potential. Each hen is able to put out 10 to 20 poults per season, and with low predation rates in town, really the biggest cause of poult mortality is weather. So, you know, these flocks can grow at an alarming rate. And even if you remove birds, if you don't remove a significant number, you're right back where you started within a couple of years. And so ODF&W has been dealing with turkey issues across the state, primarily in Western Oregon. Just about everything within our power has been attempted to alleviate the damage issues. And we have tools outside of the city limits, but inside of the city limits where discharging firearms is prohibited, our options become more limited, including some of the capture techniques that involve explosive charges, such as rocket nets, handheld net discharging guns. Those are things that we can't use inside the city limits. Now, back in the 1990s, my predecessor was contacted by a lot of residents in Eugene and decided, okay, we'll try to trap and remove birds. And they had to use a panel trap made of like a 2x4 mesh wire, probably as big as this complex of tables here. You had to pre-bait it for a couple of weeks, train the turkeys to go in it, and then just like in the old Acme cartoons, someone would pull the string and shut the door on the turkeys. Well, they would never get all the turkeys, and the turkeys that didn't go in the traps would never go near the trap again. And then within a few years, of course, you were right back where you started, because now there was more food available for less turkeys, and you had higher poult survival. So the trapping really wasn't solving the problems, and that's been seen in other cities besides Eugene. It's very costly, and in today's day and age, there's also disease concerns if you're relocating them. They have to be quarantined, tested, and then you have to have a suitable place to put them where you're not going to create a problem elsewhere. So one big solution that we've been hitting on here in Western Oregon are feeding ordinances. And those are going up in several cities. Veneta has one, Corvallis, Philomath, Dallas. And what the feeding ordinances may vary a little bit between the communities, but basically it doesn't prohibit people from feeding wildlife. You can still have your bird feeders, you know, all that kind of stuff. But if in the cause of feeding the wildlife, you're causing your neighbor's property damage, then you're in violation of the ordinance. And so it's not restricting people from enjoying wildlife and feeding wildlife. It's just if you're doing it to the point where you're causing problems, then you would get a warning from whoever's in charge of enforcing those laws that you need to cease and desist with a time frame that's put on that. If the individuals do not cease and desist, they'll get a return visit and a citation. And that's been pretty effective in some of the other communities. And that's what I've been pushing Eugene to do, as well as some of the other local communities, for quite a long time. And so I'm really excited to be here in hopes that we can make some progress on that. Now, if the turkeys didn't have that easy access to food, they would have to start moving around more. They would compete with each other for food resources, and these bigger flocks would break out into smaller flocks. Without the access to a high-quality diet, the reproductive potential lowers, so you have less individuals being brought into the population as well. Now, that doesn't solve the problem of the adults. You're still going to have adults. They're going to live longer than they would in the wild because they don't have predation. So they would still be an issue. However, if the city of Eugene would entertain at least discussing a feeding ban, that would be great. If you would adopt a feeding ban, that would be even better. And if that feeding ban were enforced, I would be willing, from my position with ODF&W, to go to specific areas where birds are still a problem, even though we're doing everything we can, including a feeding ban, and remove birds from the area to alleviate the damage. But without a feeding ban that's enforced, ODF&W's involvement with capturing and removing turkeys is a waste of time. It won't solve the problem.
I think we'll open it up for questions at this point.
Great.
And thank you, Chris, thanks for being here. That was great.
It was very, very interesting. And so I have Mike and Greg in the queue, and Chris and Claire, and Emily and Alan.
And Emily.
And Betty. Okay, there we go. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the presentation very much from both of you. And I wonder, just a couple of questions pop into my head here. Chris, did I understand you properly to say that the sort of ordinance language that's been put into place in other places is not a feeding ban, but a, how did you just characterize it? That
If the feeding leads to property damage for your neighbors, then that's the issue. Mm-hmm. The feeding itself, as long as it's not causing problems, there's no reason to, take that away from people. Lots of people like to feed wildlife, and it's not illegal.
Did I hear you say then that you would consider the involvement of ODF&W with the former rather than the latter, not a complete feeding ban, but you'd consider the involvement with if it's causing a problem for your neighbor type of ordinance?
Yeah, if it's causing a problem for people in the neighborhood and the city can enforce that and issue the warnings to people who are doing the feeding that they need to stop, and then if they don't, follow up with law enforcement action, then we have a situation that with the tools I have in my toolbox, I can make an impact on areas that are still a problem because there's so many birds in it. People don't want to wait several years for them to die out.
Right. Thank you very much, Lindsay. It's Lindsay. Yes. Okay. I thought I heard that right. Would you characterize the biggest attraction for rats in our community as human caused, whether it be compost piles or chickens or carelessness of some manner of feeding other wildlife?
I am not a rat expert.
Right?
Okay. I will say that. But what we do understand through our research is that food being left out or provided inadvertently or on purpose is what is attracting rats. Yes.
All right. Mr. Manager, do you suppose it's possible for us, I'm just asking hypothetically here, to have an ordinance that would capture both of those and and create, no outright bans of things, but a nuisance code issue that would allow action and involvement of partners if such a violation were noted?
Yeah, we can for sure propose ordinances if that's the will of the majority of the council.
I'd be willing to bet it is. We don't have anything on here for a motion, and I'm just gonna do that. I'm just gonna do it right now because it seems to make sense. So I'm gonna move that the manager return to us with language for such an ordinance as I just described.
I'll second it.
Okay.
And I'm happy to take friendlies from anybody. I just did that because it seemed like
All right.
an idea. So, thank you.
Okay, so I have a queue to discuss. Can we just leave the same queue in place and we'll just go around? Okay. So Greg, you're next.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you just moved, but
I could be happy to restate it if you like.
we'll get there at some point. A couple of things. One is, what diseases do turkeys carry, and what is their impact on domestic animals and humans?
Yeah, some of the similar diseases that Lindsay mentioned here for the rats, but the biggest one that turkeys could be a problem for public safety would be salmonella. And that's common not only in a bird like a turkey, but also in songbirds. And when it gets into a population, and it's typically spread, for example, in songbirds, they all gather on the feeder and they're eating and defecating, and it gets into the food, and then their buddies consume it and contract salmonella, and then they continue to spread it. The same thing could happen with turkeys. And talk to any of the city residents here who have turkey issues. Their yards, their decks, their driveways are covered in turkey feces. They have pets walking out into those, then cleaning their paws. You have children and adults walking through that, removing their shoes and perhaps touching their mouth or rubbing their eyes. So there's a potential to have a problem, a health problem, if we do have a disease outbreak in the turkey population.
I asked that because I work in an area where there are a lot of gangster turkeys, and I mean there are flocks of them at LCC. I mean they're out there, they're in the parking lots, around all of the buildings, and there is turkey feces everywhere, and they're not scared of humans. They will come up to you and, make their presence known. So why could there be a way that we could create, even for a temporary season, a controlled kill by licensed hunters to do something of that nature? I know they do that in Florida with, hunting wild pigs and snakes and that kind of thing, and in some other areas in the country where these, species have gone and gotten out of control. I know that it's against the law inside the city limits of Eugene now, but could we create a temporary situation where we could license hunters to go out and, curtail the population?
That would depend on, whoever's in charge of making the ordinances on that property. And if they were willing to go down that road and, of course, in a safe situation, then I would be more than willing to work with whoever to get something set up. We do have a couple tools that we use where we can discharge firearms, not only the hunting seasons, general hunting seasons. We also have what's called emergency hunts, where outside of the normal season, I can start up a hunt in a given area. And we do those almost every year all around this area. We also have what's called a kill permit. I call it the last case scenario permit. And these are issued to landowners to take various species of wildlife in damaged situations where it's warranted. You can execute the permit 24 hours a day. It doesn't cost anything, but the the animals cannot be retained. Any part of the animal, it has to be dressed out and donated to one of the local food banks. And so it can be a lot of work. Turkeys, not so much, but for example, an elk for a farmer, you can imagine.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of work. So if we did something in the neighborhood of a ban on feeding the animals and then also possible construction of a controlled kill program, could that help us alleviate this problem quicker than what it would be if we just had a standalone feeding, no feeding ban program?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it doesn't have to be a traditional hunt where you had hunters come in. It could be something where certain individuals who do this kind of activity for a living would come in and remove the birds and take them to the food bank.
Okay. So I'm not going to make a motion on this, but I would ask that staff go back and look at a combined strategy that would include a controlled hunt as part of, possibly, I guess maybe I'd have to do a friendly to Councilor Clark's motion, but I think that we need a multi-pronged strategy to deal with the issue and the problem, and I would suggest that that be part of the package to be brought back to council for consideration.
Okay. Councilor Pryor.
Thank you. I represent Ward 8, which is southwest Eugene. So I've been dealing with this problem for 10 years. And for me and the people in my ward, it's huge. It's enormous. And I'm not just talking about the size of the flocks. I'm talking not only about turkeys, but I'm also talking about deer, feral cats, and other animals. And so it's become a major problem. So with that in mind, I am interested in very proactive steps that we can take. And so when you talk about ordinances, my interest would be in an ordinance that bans feeding wildlife, and then you can create exceptions to it, like a suspended bird feeder or something that would accommodate, the person who wants to feed a hummingbird or somebody who has a finch feed or something like that. But we absolutely need to get a handle on this, and there's a lot of people in my ward who are putting out food for turkeys and for deer. I have a call from a neighbor who says their next door neighbor puts out a 50-pound bag of deer food, and then when the deer finish eating the 50-pound bag, they come over into their lawn. And deer treat my neighborhood like a giant smorgasbord. They eat the most expensive plants in every single household. And so turkeys, yes, we absolutely have to get turkeys under control, but I would expand that to include deer as well, because we have a real deer problem. And I think putting out food for cats, feral cats in particular, not domestic cats. If it's your cat, that's different. But just putting out food for any cat in the neighborhood. Rats also eat that. Possum eat that. Deer eat that, and turkeys eat that. And so just putting out food because you think you're doing a wonderful thing for the local wild cats can have a huge impact on all sorts of other wildlife. So to me, the proactive effort is to be much more, I guess you would say, restrictive in terms of an ordinance banning the feeding of wildlife with some exceptions, and that would be my interest here. With the notion of hunting, controlled hunting, if you have to deal with an adult population that's already here, I would say if you're willing to catch birds and take them away, I think that's great. I don't know how well that works with all birds. I'd like to find out what best practices have been in other metropolitan areas in terms of it, but because my ward is seeing such an enormous problem, I don't want to come at this in a kind of a casual way. I really want to come at this in a much more proactive way, because we've got 40 bird flocks routinely, and they just work their way through the neighborhood along with the deer and everything else. So for the people in my ward, it's a huge problem, and I want to be much more proactive in terms of the kinds of solutions we would look at. And I think ordinance is definitely one of the ways to do it.
There.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for being here. I am glad Councilor Clark put a motion out. I think that was the a needed step for us today. Just some general questions, thinking about the fact that the turkeys don't have any routine predators in this area, and I don't know that Eugene or even the South Hills has many coyotes, but I understand that ODFW considers coyotes a nuisance animal. Is that still the case?
It depends on the situation it's in.
Okay, so it's not a blanket designation.
No.
So, because, I mean, again, just thinking about what are all the dynamics you can come at this, I would think they would be likely predators, at least of young turkeys, if they were able to get access to them, though I know coyotes can have a bad impact on household pets as well. And then you talked about where they roost. Where do they lay their eggs?
They're a ground nesting bird. So during the spring, after the mating season, you'll see the flocks break up a little bit, and the hens will go off solitarily and find an area of cover to have a nest. And once the chicks hatch and get the size of what they call a poult, then they'll rejoin in the flock.
And has there ever been any attempt or study at looking at dealing with the eggs and just taking them out of the system?
Yeah, and they hide quite well. And the amount of area you'd have to search, and, think about a residential area. As a state official, I have to have permission to be on private property.
Right.
I would have to go door to door to door across an entire neighborhood to get permission to look for a turkey nest. It's just something that's not a real practical solution. And then if you destroy the eggs, you have to do what's called addling, where you oil the egg. Because if you just outright take the eggs out of the nest, the bird may lay a second clutch. You want to trick the bird into thinking the eggs are still viable.
So it wouldn't really be a fun Easter egg hunt that we could sponsor.
No.
Citywide.
Yeah. And then about turkeys in a place like Lane Community College, which, is butted up against the forest there, but I suspect people are not deliberately feeding the turkeys on that property.
Some people are.
Well, some people are. But I'm just wondering if there's other ways to discourage them, to harass them out of an area like that where they might not be actively getting fed.
When they're getting fed, that's a good point. Harassment is ineffective. And, talk to any of the people in your ward who we've issued harassment permits to. It's illegal to harass wildlife, and we issue these people who call in with complaints a permit that entitles them to harass the animals in a non-lethal, non-injurious manner. But the birds get used to it, and the attractant of food is so compelling that the turkeys eventually, they'll move at a distance of a super soaker water gun, or just stay ahead of you when you're chasing them away, and then they come right back.
So in theory, if we removed the allowance of the food, and we could still issue those harassment permits, so that could be another piece of our strategy.
Yeah, and without a real good reason for the turkeys to stay there, the harassment value increases.
Right. So then, Chris brought up the issue of deer, and I was also thinking about that in our possible ordinance, and I'm not remembering the specific language right now, but maybe not be too specific in which wildlife we're trying to address, so that we can maybe encompass not feeding deer if they create property damage for your neighbors. But I know we'll have more time to discuss details of that proposed motion. And then just going back to the rats for a few minutes, we got an email from someone who was concerned about baiting the sewer lines and impacting our water. Could we get a little more detail about what is involved in the baiting of the sewer lines, so we all know what we're talking about?
I'm going to bring up some public works folks to answer that.
Hello, thank you. So when we bait the sewers, my name is Josh Colley. I'm with Public Works Maintenance. I supervise the program that it's part of our inflow and elimination program to protect the sewer lines. So that the rat baiting has fallen onto that program. We don't have a rat baiting program. I tell people often there's no one who has that as their work duty, but we do that as part of our inflow, our I&I program. When we bait the sewers, we only bait the sanitary sewer. We don't bait the storm sewer. We don't want it to go out into the rivers. Stormwater's been my primary focus for like about the last 8 years. So that's something that we really look at. That's always been our practice. We only bait the sanitary sewer. We don't bait above ground. We don't bait on private property. We get a lot of questions about those things. When we bait the sanitary sewer, we go out when we get a call, go out and take a look. Usually if someone calls and said they saw a rat or they had a rat at their place, we bait the sanitary sewer that is just in the area, the sewer manholes. So we go out and we pull the manhole lids, look for any evidence of rats. If someone calls and says it, we will go out and bait the manhole whether or not we see evidence on the first time. And then we follow up and check and see if they're taking the rat bait and going anywhere with it. If they're not taking the rat bait, if it's still down there, then we don't bait again. You had a big increase in rat calls, but a lot of the time we're not seeing the rats in the sewers. We put the bait down there, and then we come back and the bait is still down in the bottom of the sewer line. So if they do take it, then we bait again and we follow up again.
Great, and then material in that sewer line goes into the wastewater treatment facility. Great, those are my questions and comments. Thank you.
Okay, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation and bringing such a full complement of experts. I also want a shout out to the fan people I'm really impressed with the extent and dedication of their work. I gathered a bunch of, I went through my emails and my conversations, and I'm just going to give you these random suggestions. One, can we shoot the rats too? They talked about inspecting both voluntary, maybe led by urban farmers or neighborhood groups with education, or some people wanted the city to go inspect them. Another idea was a yearly permit or license to have chickens. Maybe the dog license people could take that on with great joy, I'm sure. Let's see, absolutely ban open compost bins, buy a huge amount of those Darth Vader compost bins or the new equivalent and sell them really cheaply. Definitely speed up that kitchen scrap program with the yard waste. Encourage restaurants to give their scraps to the pig farmers rather than in the dumpsters. Make sure that big dumpsters are closed and there's no spills around them. Fence vegetable and fruit gardens as a food source. Dog feces, actually, rats will eat that. And although we definitely encourage people to take their plastic bags when they're walking their dogs, a lot of people have yards and they don't clean it up every day. So that would be something to encourage. Barbecue grills were mentioned as a possible source of food. Blocking entrances to the houses. When I was talking to a pest control company that was in my neighborhood, blocking entrances to houses, they say it's really expensive, but that keeps the rats out of your building. Landscaping, if it's low to the ground, can be habitat for rats. They noted that some places where there's new construction have less rats. Concerned about the poison in the sewers. What happens to those rats that die? Do they come out of the sewers? Do they come back out to the neighborhood?
No, they don't. I mean, we don't remove them. The poison, the rat bait that we use, it makes them look for water, so it keeps them in the sewer.
Okay.
So they don't come above ground.
People have been concerned that the rats get out of the sewer and then come and poison cats and children and get in their walls and then die there and smell bad. And then free traps. I don't know what kind of traps you were talking about, but they were talking about those big wooden traps that have to be very cheap, and they were hoping that the city could just hand those out. Let's see. And the potential ban on wildlife food, I'm not quite sure I understand that, but I guess we'll get back to that. I'm out of time.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, turkeys are a big problem in my part of town as well, especially Laurel Hill Valley and Fairmont neighborhood around Hendricks Hill, that area. And we've got flocks of them. Laurel Hill Valley's been dealing with it for years. In fact, had ODF and W come out and say, don't feed the turkeys. And that is the biggest problem, is feeding the turkeys and the rats. And that comes from access to food. And I agree, it's compost and chickens and bird feeders are all what's creating the problem, and it needs just to be cleaned up almost daily to if you want to get rid of the problem. So that's what you have to do with working with neighbors. That leads me to believe that education campaign and a feeding ban ordinance makes a lot of sense as a first step, and then we can ratchet up into the more draconian things if it still needs to be done. I would like to reiterate that poisoning is a last resort. Poisoning rats, if they get poisoned, they can end up in your walls, but they can also end up harming humans, and other pets, and raptors can eat the rats and things. So, and then you mentioned that if we did a ban or an ordinance and we enforced it, then you would use some more things in your toolbox. And what does enforcement look like in other communities, and what would be your what would enforcement look like, and then what's your toolbox look like?
Yeah, the enforcement varies by community. Philomath actually had the city police enforcing it, and in Veneta they don't have a city police. They have a guy who deals with nuisance animals, and he deals with it. So it just depends on, what the structure of City of Eugene is, and, who would be available to enforce such an ordinance. And
Be Lindsay.
As far as other tools go, if you got an ordinance in place, it's being enforced, and we're still having problems, if it's just a few birds, sometimes those can be hand captured. If it's a big flock, we'd use something, perhaps a drop net, that we could use legally. And, any of the bait and trap situations I will not do, because, you make the problem worse at first because you're baiting the birds in. You never capture them all. And back in the 90s when my predecessor did this, there's a lot of people who love animals around here, and they had their traps sabotaged on almost a nightly basis. So anything that you would leave overnight unattended, I'm not willing to leave out there as a piece of equipment.
And so what do you do once you capture them?
I would take the turkeys from here and they go to the food bank. I will not relocate turkeys.
And does hunting come into this, shooting them?
Not inside the city limits, of course.
It's illegal to discharge a gun
Correct.
inside the city limits, so yeah, I wouldn't think that's something we would want to necessarily immediately go to. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Betty,
Oh, gosh.
got to you.
I've developed sympathy for turkeys during this conversation.
You got converted, Betty?
I mean,
Poor things, we're out.
I was going to say, I do think that the ban should be regardless of whether you get a report that they're bothering the neighbors. But why couldn't you trap them and take them out to Mount Pisgah? Well, they wouldn't bother anybody out there.
Here's an example. Our office in Roseburg got roped into trapping, and now they're stuck with it. They trapped some turkeys and banded them and released them on Thorn Prairie, which is down by Steamboat on the Umpqua National Forest. Some of their turkeys showed up in Oak Ridge within a year.
They moved.
Yeah.
Long way.
Great distances. So there's really no place we can put them where we can guarantee this isn't going to create a problem for someone else. And, with that, I'm not willing to be part of someone else's problem. And, taking them, salvaging the meat and taking it to the charitable organizations, that helps the community as well.
How do you get the meat? You chop their heads off?
They would be put down humanely.
Whatever that means.
I don't want to go there.
I don't. And did I hear that turkeys eat dog feces? Did
They eat a
somebody
lot
say
of
that?
stuff. Yeah.
I wondered if.
They eat a lot of vegetation, a lot of insects.
I know they do
reptiles,
vegetation, but
amphibians.
I've suspected that they're maybe coming after the cat feces in my yard. A cat has decided to use my yard for its toilet, and the turkeys are swarming over it.
So then are you saying you're torn between getting rid of the turkeys or?
No, I'm not torn. I just during this conversation, I started to develop some sympathy for them. Thinking, rats, I've never had any sympathy for. And I'm wondering, why couldn't we take some of our extra city money, which we have for that supplementary budget, and trap all the rats and have them exterminated?
All of them?
Well, all over the city. The rats are becoming and they're much worse than turkeys, I think.
Can we
Is
just
that
take that as a
possible?
rhetorical question at the moment? I think
It's a real question. Somebody
know.
wrote to me that she has spent a lot of money paying to trap rats. Why shouldn't the city pay for that if it's a health hazard and they're all over the place?
you could choose to do that if you wanted to do that.
We could do that. How much? We could find out how much that costs, right?
I think it would
Not-
be a
not too many
huge
millions of
undertaking.
huh?
I think it'd be a huge undertaking to try to trap all the rats in the city.
Pest control places are doing it for some people right now.
Correct.
Can I maybe
For
add a
money.
little bit, because we've done a little bit, and I promised Chris he wouldn't have to answer rat questions, just turkeys, but we've done a little bit of research, and I think generally speaking, it's really hard to trap your way out of this problem because they multiply so fast, much faster than turkeys, and it's kind of an alarming rate. So the most effective strategy is to change their habitat, which is remove the food, remove the nesting areas, and most of those are human behaviors, is how we secure our compost and our dog food and all of those things. And so that's kind of where we're focused. We could look into that, but generally I think what we know today, it's hard to trap your way out of this
Well,
problem.
some individuals have said that they have trapped their way out of it on their property. And I do think it's a public health thing. I don't think education will work. I think I've thought of that. I don't happen to have that problem, but I've thought of that on a night when it's cold and dark and raining. And I thought, if I had a chicken feed out there, would I go out and clean it up right now? Probably not, no matter how much you educated me. And I think that people, it's a big chore to try to keep, if you do have chickens, for example, to try to keep everything picked up. And there would be days when you say, I do not want to go out in the mud. I don't think that it might work for some, it might help some, but they're coming after the turkeys. I don't have much sympathy for disposing of deer. I don't know. When I first moved to my house, I went out, it was at dusk, to put to the garbage can. I didn't even have a dog at the time. And I thought I saw boxers running away. The rear end of a boxer dog looks a lot like a deer. And it turned out, I found out I had a lot of deer around. But I don't see them as being, I know for some people they're a nuisance. Thank you.
Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this report. I wanted to continue on something Emily said about the traps that you were talking about, Lindsay. So is that something people could loan out, or what was your thought process?
We have done very basic research just on the costs of a very basic snap trap. And so I don't know if those are one-time use traps or if those are something you can reset. I think the ones that I have in my garage, you can reset them. But So I think we would probably want something along those lines.
At least as an initial concept, I think we're talking about when we go out on a call, whether it be Public Works or our nuisance staff that it's responding to complaints, we would at least have some tools that we could offer them to help start to crack away at the problem. And trapping does make a difference. It's not that it's not effective at all, but it needs to be coupled with some other strategies. So this would be, again, the multi-pronged approach, trapping just being one of the things that probably needs to happen. So that's how we're thinking about it, rather than just wholesale make tons of traps available. We could do that too, but we're thinking it more of as just a tool when we go out and visit with
So
people.
like targeted, you're educating them, and then on top of that, hey, here's some other options that you could, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing I just wanted to add, I'm in favor of Chris's idea of making it more of a complete ban, only because damage to someone's property can mean something different to different people. So I would be in support of being tougher rather than more lenient.
Okay. And if I can, if you remember several years ago out in Yachats, there was a woman feeding bears to excess. And it created a huge public safety issue. And unfortunately, the legislation that came out with that, which is now listed under ORS 496.731, which was a prohibition on feeding wildlife, started out broad-based, like what you're talking about, and it got skinnied down to specifically address bear, cougar, coyote, and there was one other one in there, wolves, of all things. And I guess lots of people feed wolves. But, you know, that could have been a statewide law, and we wouldn't be here discussing this today. So, you know, including other species, when I heard that, I thought, you know, that's right on the money, because then you don't have to go back and address that situation when it comes up in the future, if it does.
Right, just to piggyback on that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike. The takeaway here is that it's about the human behavior and our kind of recognizing our own behavior changes, and so that relates to deer and rats and turkeys, right? It's all the same, so it seems to make sense. So anyway, you have a motion.
Thank you. I do. Well, I appreciate Catherine clarifying the mumbling I did earlier in order to make it sound like an intelligible motion. I appreciate that. What I was trying to capture in that conversation, I think you did well in this, and so I just want to pre-state that this is both intentional and unintentional in order to address the nuisance things that were said. But I should have mentioned in advance that I move to direct the city manager to prepare for council consideration an ordinance that prohibits feeding wildlife if the feeding causes damage to neighboring property or attracts rats.
I second, and then I'd like to amend.
And may I just finish with a little explanation
yep.
of what I was thinking here? I almost amended this to say intentionally or unintentionally create, so that we get it from both those who are out feeding on purpose and the nuisance that's created. So I left that out, but I think the language captures both of those intentions, or at least with regard to enforcement allows for both of those in this language, but that's something we can debate later. I also liked what you said about leaving it more broad and general with wildlife. I was going to get more specific about a couple of things. The only problem for me in this is that it doesn't really address cats. And I really wish we were. This specifically calls out wildlife and talks about rats. I don't know how we would address that appropriately, but I know that that is a concern, especially for many people in my ward, as well as our nutria, which I think are covered under this. Lovely.
You could include feral cats.
Yeah.
What do you know if that's...
I'm gonna actually, in a very uncharacteristic fashion, I'm gonna leave it to the manager and staff to propose for us for our next work session to do the specifics of a wide berth here. So bring back what you think would capture those things.
Okay, I have Betty and then Emily.
I move to eliminate the part about if it's a nuisance to neighbors.
Second.
Well, it doesn't say nuisance anywhere, so which part?
What did you say?
You read it again.
Damage, whatever.
I'll read it again. Oh, you mean if the feeding causes damage to neighboring property or attracts rats?
I move to eliminate that part.
Second.
Okay, all right. Anyone want to speak to that? Claire?
Damage.
So that would disallow bird feeders all over this city. That would put the wild bird feeding people out of business. And I feed birds in my yard. Turkeys don't come anywhere near it, so I would not support that.
Okay,
amendment.
we have to eliminate, we have to make an exception for bird feeders, obviously.
Yeah. What's the damage part?
There's also squirrel feeders.
Okay, so are you still, okay, so Emily, you want to speak to this? Anyone else want to speak to this?
Amendment.
Betty's motion
To amend.
to remove the
Well,
motion.
I'll speak to it since I made the motion.
Okay, go for it.
I think that some people wouldn't complain, and anyway, it just might cause trouble between neighbors. You have to say where the damage is, or say that person is feeding and causing damage to my neighborhood. It's just a, how would you prove that? I think it should just be a blanket feeding, but I'd like to propose another amendment. I don't think that's in order right now, though, but I want to exempt bird feeders, obviously.
So you want us to vote on we have to vote on the motion
Yes.
amendment you're proposing, and
Yes.
then you can do another one.
Yes,
Chris, do
right.
you want to speak to this current motion?
Yeah. In fact, what I would offer would be a friendly amendment to her amendment.
My amendment.
Which would exempt domestic bird feeders in people's yards. In other words, I think you could make an exemption that would accommodate wild bird feeders and bird feeders in people's yards. What I'm looking to try to do is to ban feeding where they just set big bowls of food out, where anything can come along and eat it. But I don't want to impose on people who like to feed wild birds. I think you can approach this with a series of exemptions rather than to try to create some sort of a definition of what damage is. So I'll support the amendment, but I would ask if you could friendly to say to exempt certain types of feeders.
And Emily would have to accept that, too.
I second.
What about squirrels?
Certain types of feeders, so it could be domestic birds or squirrels.
And some of those are part of the problem through unintentional feeding.
Yeah.
You get the little birds up there, they knock the food to the ground. People don't police up the food on the ground. The turkeys come in and eat it.
Yeah.
Well, still, we want to encourage wild birds.
Well, we can discuss what the exemption would look like. I would like to at least get it acknowledged, and then we can talk about it later.
Okay. Okay, so do you want to speak to this amended motion now?
I was just going to say, I understand what Betty's trying to do, but I think to remove the language about, I think it's easier to leave the language that I proposed because that limits the city's ability to enforce unless there's an active bit of damage of some kind. So maybe instead of trying to create a whole series of exceptions, because people can come up with, well, but what about what I do, which is this, and that's not hurting anybody. Instead of trying to convince a whole series of exceptions, we come up with a different standard other than property damage that allows for the enforcement action when it becomes whatever we consider a nuisance. If nuisance isn't property damage, then what's the point of nuisance? Because then it allows people to do as they will until it hits that nuisance point. So perhaps Catherine can come up with a different nuisance than property damage, or a different way to frame that until they, I don't know. I'm just saying, I think if we set about the road of trying to come up with every exception to, you can't feed any animals in any way. I think that's going to be.
One of the things that we could do is if whatever the motion is that you pass, based on this conversation, we can come back with different wording, different options to try to get to whatever the various intents are, and knowing that there might be different degrees of intent, and we will try to come back with different languages. Could be different ways of defining it, or things that are more stringent than other kinds of things, or exemptions. So we can come back with some things that may be helpful the next time.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that. I'm looking at the clock and realizing we are completely overrunning our second item, and we have a lot of opinions. So I was wondering if we could sort of go back earlier and simply direct the manager and staff to
Here, I can
develop
actually-
some language.
I'll take the,
You tell me what
We've got
that
some, just from a just process standpoint, we've got two things on the table.
Right.
We have your motion,
Right.
and then we have the amendment.
to vote on the amendment.
Right.
if Betty will, forgive me, if
No.
Betty will,
I want to vote on the amendment.
if Betty will withdraw that, I'll take out the
Betty
words
won't withdraw it.
neighboring property. Because then it's just damage and they have the freedom to give us what it is they think that best.
I want to vote on the amendment.
I still want to talk.
Okay, and I'm going to get back to you. Yes, sorry, you're on my list. All right, Emily, go for it.
I don't understand why we would make a whole nother layer of work to go find out if somebody's being bothered. And that's just like crazy. Who's going to take the complaints? Who's going to go out? And a question I had from before is, how much is the citation going to be? How much of a deterrent are we going to give people after we get that they're a nuisance and go back and look at it? So I guess that's something that will be decided, but it's a big question for me. I think that it's really a dilemma. You want to ban every outdoor food because it's so much simpler and the bird food's going to fall on the ground. But you already know what kind of pushback we're going to get if we say you can't feed birds. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure how you balance that. I know we need to get on with that, but I did have two more rat questions. So.
Okay. So are we ready to vote on Betty's amendment?
As added to by Chris.
What is it?
So Betty's amendment, can you read the amendment with Betty's?
Okay. Betty's amendment was around damage.
It was to remove the last clause, which was, so basically the motion would read, move to direct the city manager to bring back an ordinance for council discussion that bans feeding wildlife.
Yep.
With exceptions.
Except for.
I accepted as friendly.
With some exceptions.
With the exception for domestic bird feeders was the friendly.
That's the amendment. So we vote on that now, right?
Right. Okay. So all in favor of that amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4. And opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's your turn.
So now I have to decide which of those I really want to go for. And so I am, I'm going to vote against that amendment.
There we go.
Okay.
I will
Okay, so
now.
now we're back to the original.
If I could say, I'll take a friendly to open this up so staff has more latitude to interpret our discussion and we can have a further discussion later.
Yeah.
If somebody has a friendly.
Whatever it is.
I'll amend my own motion to say, these words are intended to capture the discussion. And I think the staff got that and can bring back to us the appropriate opportunity to discuss the specifics at a later work session.
Is that a motion?
Take it any way you like, Betty. I'm going to just stop now.
We're okay with that. Like I said before, we'll bring you back different options for you to consider within that motion.
Right.
We'd be fine with that.
Okay, so now we're ready to vote on the original motion. All in favor of the original motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opposed.
What is it now? It still has those
It's the
words
original-
about.
Yeah, it has the words you objected to.
No, I'll vote against it.
Okay, so 7 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you.
We were going to discuss it. It still hasn't, it has to be a nuisance that's reported.
So
Coming back.
where we
But our-
are is this is coming back to you for discussion. So
Right, well, we will come back to you. Given this conversation, I think it's hard to craft the motion on the fly for that, but given the conversation, our direction is you're for sure interested in addressing the issues, you're trying to address them in a proactive way. There's a couple of different options that you'll be able to consider on that. And so we will bring all of that back to you at a work session for your conversation before you actually would craft a final ordinance based on any of that.
So we could still choose that later.
Absolutely.
Both options are on the
Absolutely.
table. It's not a
just to give
have
enough
to.
direction to staff.
I'll approve
So
it.
what did we vote for? We voted to ban it if it's a nuisance.
We voted to talk about
Direction
it.
for staff to go.
Yeah, we voted to have them bring something back.
Okay, I'll vote for that if it's just.
Well, We've already voted.
Okay.
We've already done, it's fine. It's fine, it will move on.
I know this guy you can hire with a flute.
Yeah, really. So thank you very much. That was.
started out as a Bugs Bunny
We thought
script.
that was going to be just a quick work session. So I do have a question about this second work session because we're very constrained for time. So.
Goodness.
Rob is a masterful guy. He can do this.
So.
Let's set it up.
Okay, yes, we're going to get started.
We're going to get started, and we could maybe have a motion at 1:30 to extend by maybe 10 minutes if we need that. Just planting that seed. I'll just plant that seed now.
Start as soon as you're ready. Just introduce yourself and then start.
All right. Hey. All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Dan Kaler. I'm with Public Works Engineering. Joining me today is Deb Gallardi. She is our consultant that helped formulate some of the methodology. And then Eric Brown from our planning department is going to talk about some of the incentives. So today we'll have a variety of information, pretty detailed in nature. We're not seeking a decision, just more informative in nature, just kind of summarizing where we're at with our updates to the Transportation SDC. And if there are questions that we could certainly meet with you individually to address in further depth. As a brief overview of where we're headed, I'll provide you some of the rationale for the update to our Transportation SDC, give you some background both on the state and local level. Deb will then talk about some of the methodology options, provide a comparison of similar sized communities, and then Eric will talk about some of the incentives that we're proposing that align with the Envision Eugene goals. And lastly, I'll talk about our work thus far to talk to community groups, summarize where we're at, and then also talk about our next steps. There's three key reasons for the update. First of which is supporting Envision Eugene, the goals of affordable housing, efficient transportation, and compact growth. We're also working to support the transportation system plan. The transportation SDCs are a vital financial component for the construction of those TSP projects. In particular, the TSDCs help fund those capacity increasing projects. And lastly, the key reason is we want to be in compliance with the state statute. In particular, there's been a variety of amendments since we've adopted our methodology in 2004. A key change has been for communities to prepare a project list of those projects which they intend to use SDC revenue. Next, I'll hopefully, tackle some of the key questions. So why do we collect SDC fees? And for transportation, we're just looking at trying to recover the existing investment that we made for construction of arterial collector roads and other type of infrastructure that's currently available to serve growth. And the other component is the improvement fee portion, and that's basically we're collecting fees to help fund those planned construction projects which would serve future growth. Then from a statewide perspective, Oregon's one of 29 other states which have this type of impact fee type of revenue. And it's addressed, the requirements are addressed in Chapter 223 of the state statute. And the statute contains or discusses 5 key infrastructure categories. Today we're just focusing on the infrastructure category, or the transportation infrastructure category. And there's also discussion in the statute about how to basically develop the fee, and then also talks about the freedom for communities to have a lower fee if they want to maybe address some community concerns or alignment with other type of community vision. So from a local perspective, along with the overriding theme of recapturing the cost that development poses to a community, a key policy initiative will be looking at alignment with Envision Eugene, where we're trying to, in some areas, lower the SDC fees to encourage certain types of growth. The next few slides will kind of illustrate some of the types of projects that would utilize SDC revenue. The first couple here address at least the improvement side. These are new construction projects, whether it be a street or intersection, lighting or traffic signals. Similarly, for like multi-use paths. And the key thing here with these improvements, we're adding capacity to the existing system. And it uses basically we call it the improvement fee component of the system development charge. Whereas other projects utilize the reimbursement fee component, and in this case, we're either preserving or maintaining those infrastructure that are either like of a collector or arterial nature, which would serve growth. And the reimbursement fee component is a vital funding mechanism to support our pavement preservation program. And next, I'll pass it on to Deb, and she'll kind of give us some further insight on the concepts and formulation.
John.
Okay, thank you. Deb Ghilardi, consultant to the city on the project. As Dan said, Oregon statutes provide guidelines for updating methodologies, and the statutes allow for the fee to be structured as an improvement fee, a reimbursement fee, or a combination of the two. I think Dan gave a pretty good explanation of improvement versus reimbursement. Your current methodology is a combined improvement and reimbursement, and certainly was considered for the update. We did look at another methodology, which is an improvement-only approach. This has been used fairly recently and with some legal challenge in the state. And because of that, and also because you would lose the flexibility of having the reimbursement fee funding for pavement preservation, we are recommending sticking with the current combined improvement and reimbursement approach. So that's what I'll present. The basic formula for calculating SDCs is pretty simple. It's costs divided by trips, transportation vehicle trips, and you get a cost per trip. Of course, the devil's in the details, and in this case, the trips are fairly straightforward to forecast. Part of the TSP, the travel demand models get put together, and we forecast out what the growth in trips, because these are only applied to new development, we are looking only at growth in trips. It's where we determine what are the growth costs that gets a little more complicated. And there are two primary steps involved in that. The first is to look at projects, and these can be very complex, multifaceted projects, and some of which may be rehabilitation and replacement of existing capacity, whereas there also may be a component where new facilities are being added. So we first make a determination of what's new capacity costs versus rehabilitation. We also consider what other funding sources. Are there committed funds from grants or ODOT, other agencies? What assessment policies might impact the funding for a project? So what we're after is identifying the new capacity costs that are going to be locally funded, and that is what we look at then to determine the second step, which is what are the growth portion of those costs, because you can have new capacity costs that are also related to increasing the level of service for existing development. So it's a pretty technically rigorous process. We go through each project on the project list that comes out of the TSP. We look at what are the appropriate performance metrics for that type of project, whether it's a roadway project or a bike project. And then we make a determination of what is an equitable share of that cost for new development versus existing development. So the results of that process applied to this project list from your recently adopted transportation system plan is, you can see here broken out into the two fee components. The improvement fee totals about $113 million. That would be eligible part of recovery through the TSDCs. That's about a third of the total costs on the project list. And for the reserve capacity, so that's the cost in the existing system, which obviously the existing system's already been paid for, so it's just, getting that reimbursement for that past investment to bring everyone up to par in terms of an equitable funding scheme. So the total, as you can see at the bottom there, is about $121 million associated with future growth. Now remember, this is over a 20-year planning period. So when we plug that back into our basic SDC equation, we're dividing by 41,000 new trips. Those are trips during the PM peak hour. That's why if it seems kind of low when looking at a 20-year period, it is just the trips during the PM peak hour, which is when capacity is most constrained. And so that's what we look at for assessing the SDC. We come up with a cost per trip that's just under $3,000. A new development is then assessed an SDC based on that $29.51 per trip and the number of trips that it is estimated to generate. We rely on information from industry standard manuals on trip generation that has every different land use you can imagine and estimates how many trips that type of use would generate. For a single family dwelling unit, it's pretty straightforward. It's one trip during the PM peak hour, so each new dwelling unit would be assessed $29.51 under the new methodology and fee. Multifamily generates a fraction of that, 0.58 to be precise, so per unit, but obviously you're going to have multiple units, so that rate would be multiplied by the number of units, so you can see 100 units, and this example would be about $171,000. For a typical restaurant with 1,500 square feet, the non-residential uses tend to be much higher trip generators, so a typical residential or a typical restaurant would have about 4 trips per 1,000 square feet. So in this case, you've got both the type of use which generates the cost per 1,000 square feet, and then also the size of the building. It would be scaled based on the size of the building. So in this case, the restaurant is about $33,000. It gives you an idea of a typical range of fees. This last slide that I'll present just has a comparison both of your existing and your proposed new fee. So while the fee would increase about 30%, it is still even the proposed is on the lower end of the sample here. And so you'd be just under Springfield, which is 34.36. And Salem is the lowest on this list right now. They are doing an update that is, and maybe changing their fee here in the next year. Washington County it tends to have some of the highest fees, close to $8,500 for a single-family home. So fast-growing areas tend to have significantly higher fees.
Well, Portland.
Portland just adopted a new fee, and I believe it was around $5,000 for, and we can certainly provide more information. I'm going to turn it over to Eric now to talk about the incentives.
Thanks, Deb. This is on, right? So as Dan mentioned, we've been working with Public Works to see how we can further our community's vision through adjustments to our system development charges. And so the SDC incentives that we're proposing really tackle 2 of the pillars of Envision Eugene, although it supports the community vision as a whole. But the incentives are focused on providing housing affordable to all income levels, as well as promoting compact urban development and efficient transportation systems. Before I launch into the new incentives that we're proposing, I just want to recap some of the incentives that are already on the books, and I'll do this quickly, mindful of our time. So we have a transportation demand management incentive already in place, where a developer can reduce their transportation system development charge by the amount corresponding to reduced vehicle trips resulting from actions that would reduce those trips. So whether it's providing bicycle parking or employee bus passes, developers can reduce their SDCs that way. We also have a 10% nodal development credit. This was done prior to Envision Eugene, where we identified nodes around the community where we wanted to incentivize development and accommodate growth. And so that is already existing. And I should say that these incentives are not intended to change under the new proposal. There is also a downtown and West University commercial area incentive for new retail or commercial infill. So they get 100% redevelopment, or sorry, 100% credit for redevelopment. And this is intended to spur new business and make it easier for businesses to establish themselves in these areas. In addition, as part of our broader low-income housing program, we have 100% exemption for all local SDCs, including the transportation SDC, in order to bring more affordable units to our community.
Currently.
Yes. Yeah. So as I mentioned, those incentive programs are not meant to change under this proposal. They will remain in place, but we are proposing that we adopt new incentives to further our community vision and, as I said, support affordable housing options and compact development. So the incentives that we're proposing today align with our Envision Eugene key corridors, our frequent transit network, and we're offering a new bonus to the transportation demand management incentive. This is a complex matrix because planners love matrices. But I'll skip this and I'll just jump right to some maps that show where the incentives we're proposing are going to be would be located if they're adopted. So the downtown plan area boundary would receive a 30% reduction to their transportation system development charge. Developments, residential developments and mixed-use developments along our key corridors would receive a 15%. And both of these both the downtown plan boundary incentive and the Envision Eugene key corridor incentive, it's one or the other. So developments that are downtown along a key corridor wouldn't receive both of these. They would receive the 30% for being downtown. We're also proposing a 10% and a 5% incentive for developments that are either within a quarter-mile buffer or half-mile buffer of the frequent transit network. Again, this is either or. And so it's not designed, these are designed to be cumulative. Development could receive both the key corridor incentive as well as a FTN incentive, but it's one or the other for either downtown or along the key corridor or within a quarter-mile or half-mile buffer. You'll remember that on within the matrices, I already mentioned that we wanted to add a bonus for TDM, for transportation demand management. So we're also proposing a 10% bonus to developments who have a signed transportation demand management agreement with the city. So if they guarantee that they're going to do certain things to reduce vehicle trips, they can get a 10% bonus on that incentive. And finally, and this is not location-based, we're proposing a 50% reduction in transportation system development charges for secondary dwelling units across the city. And this is in line with incentive programs that are already existing in Portland and in Springfield, although it should be noticed that they offer a 100% SDC waiver for secondary dwelling units. And we're proposing a 50% to the transportation here. So I'll turn it back to Dan.
So lastly, as a summary of our activity thus far, we've had a variety of outreach meetings. We've gone to a variety of committee meetings, and some of the key topics have been just clarification on what's a local improvement versus a capacity increasing improvement, with the realization that SDCs can only be funded towards capacity increasing improvements. Other topics have been just clarification on the rate of the incentives, kind of balancing the demand. We certainly want to fund a transportation system program, but we also want to incentivize certain types of development. We are planning to return to some of these committees and kind of give them an update where we are. Most of them, we've already had 2 meetings with those committees. Moving forward, we will issue a 90-day notice that is sent to the interested parties that want to be advised on the status of our SDC update. We are planning to conduct additional outreach to Plan Commission, home builders, and Chamber of Commerce, and those will happen probably April and May. And we also need to have our final methodology available for public review at least 60 days prior to the public hearing. And we are planning to come back and update you as to where we're at with some of the formal documents, such as changes to city code, updates to our methodology. There's a variety of appendices which help describe the formulation of the methodology as well as the actual rate calculation. And lastly, our formal project list. And then the intent is to have our public hearing in June of this year and then seek adoption the following month. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share our progress thus far, and certainly open up for any questions you may have.
Move to extend 10 minutes.
Second.
All in favor of moving to extend? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Excellent. Thank you for that very succinct presentation. And I have Councilor Clark, Zelenka, and Taylor in the queue. So take it away, Mike.
Emily.
Oh, and Emily. Got it.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I appreciate it very much. I noticed the higher Springfield SDCs for transportation. Can you tell me, because I know that Springfield discounted recently their SDCs. Can somebody give me a better definition of what it was in, that Springfield decided to discount?
This is related to SDUs?
SDCs, yeah. They offer currently a SDC credit for new home building, as I understand it. Maybe I'm incorrect in how I'm defining that. I'm looking for...
So my understanding is that Springfield offers a waiver for all local SDCs for SDUs. I'm not sure of general residential, though.
Well, I think the other point is, I think Springfield, what Dan had said earlier, is that a community can unilaterally reduce what their SDC, what the maximum is, and I think Springfield did that. So they could have had a higher SDC, but they decided that it wasn't competitive for
building things, make them more expensive.
They reduced it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was kind of my point also, Mark. I don't know, you might be the right person to ask this question too, perhaps. I don't know. Slide number 4, please. Shows the 2 major motivations for the existence of SDCs. The second one, to collect on planned new capacity. Have we built anything in transportation in the last 5 years that you would define as having a major impact to add new auto capacity?
Hey, Mark.
Well, that's a good question, because you had a work session on Monday evening, where Chris Henry presented the South Willamette study and the new traffic signal at the entrance to Woodfield Station. So that was partially funded with the improvement component of transportation SDCs, and it has a safety benefit for pedestrians crossing, but also has a vehicular capacity component on travel on South Willamette.
So that's kind of I don't know how to define it. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that we didn't create new or larger capacity in the roadway in any way. What we did was redesign how we're using what we're using currently in place, and say that by how we measure it, that created new capacity for us. Is that
right? Capacity. You can increase capacity
with efficiencies.
Right. Doesn't that?
But have we actually built new capacity, not just with recreating and garnering efficiencies?
Well, another example is, and I don't know if it was in the last 5 years, the Rexius property out off of 13th. So 13th is a neighborhood collector, and so they built that project, and they got an SDC credit for the additional capacity. So that was a project we would have built, but they built it for their development, and all the development paid for was the local street component, and they got an SDC credit or to their reimbursement, or excuse me, to their improvement fee for that additional capacity they built above and beyond what was needed for their development.
My point is, half of what we charge in SDCs, and I think we have recently raised transportation SDCs, and I appreciate the new incentives. I think they're a good idea. I'm all for it. I think we've raised them in a way that makes housing at least more less affordable, more expensive, and I think conversely, when the average resident would be asked what do they imagine new capacity to be, I would think their thinking process would be new roadways, things that would make traffic easier to get through. I would think we would be challenged to have a vast majority of people in our community say we've added new capacity, although you can define it that way in some ways, despite the fact that we're charging ever more transportation SDCs, and that kind of that's always been a problem for me. I just want to kind of define it and say it out loud. Thank you very much.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, could you go back to slide 18, the rate comparison?
So this basically shows, next one, yeah. This basically shows we have one of the lowest SDCs, transportation SDCs in the state. 15% below Springfield and 60% of Portland's and way below some other folks. So we're one of the lowest in the state. Why?
Well, comparisons are always hard, but part of it is that your TSP is, you're investing in a lot of active mode transportation capacity, which under the statute, we're talking about all modes, and some of the capacity enhancement is in the form of improved level of performance, which also is explicitly allowed in the statute. So it's not just the new roadways, it's the signals and all the things that improve operational efficiency. So it really depends on the list of the projects, and projects like in Washington County where they're building lots of new roads, full roads, and not just looking at operational efficiencies, and the active modes tend to be much more expensive.
So, I'm still unclear what you can use transportation SDCs for. That definition you gave about capacity and reimbursement and improvements, can you go over that and make that a little bit clearer?
I can try.
And in particular, can you use the SDCs to implement the council directive to have the TSP create an action plan to implement the goals of the climate recovery ordinance?
Well, so the statute says that improvement SDCs can be used to fund capacity increasing improvements. And it defines capacity increasing as adding new facilities, clearly, or enhancing the performance of existing facilities, like the traffic signal, which is both a new facility and an enhancement. I don't, with respect to the climate action, it would just depend on.
Right. I think the answer is yes, because the projects, and the other part about SDCs is that it can only be used for capital projects.
Right.
And so it's the capital projects in the TSP that will lead to increased use of active and alternative modes of transportation is what's going to get us to the goals in the climate recovery ordinance. And the transportation SDC is a integral part of the funding of those types of improvements.
Okay, so there's increased capacity, but what was the other one?
So the other piece, the other component is the reimbursement fee, and that can be used for any capital improvement in the transportation system, incling, pavement preservation type projects,
and
rehabilitation.
RSDC is a combo, and
Correct.
Do we allocate between those two?
Mm-hmm. Right. Track it separate.
And what's the allocation? 50-50 or?
No, I think I don't remember what it is under the existing. It's close to, for transportation, I think it's close to, I'd be guessing. It's not that far off of 50-50, and I can't remember which way it's going.
Ballpark.
Yeah.
33?
Which one, 67? 6733, okay. And, okay, and then the SDU, 50%, that's a new one?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Betty.
Okay, I just have one question. On the reduction for transportation demand management, do you follow up to see if they really did it? You said if they promised to do it. Is there a follow-up?
Yeah, there's a TDM agreement signed with the city. I think Rob Innerfeld is in the room if he wants to.
He left.
He left. Okay.
I just
3 minutes ago.
understood the agreement part, but I wondered how you know they follow the,
Yeah,
adhere to the agreement.
I can't answer that question.
Well, I think that's part and parcel of the implementation plan for the transportation system plan to meet the climate recovery ordinances, that we have a transportation demand management program now. We follow it up, but it's more haphazard. So I think the idea is to better structure that program. So there is the follow-up, and that there is more encouragement and actually more transportation demand management agreements with new development or existing development, for that matter.
I'm just hoping that it's followed, that you
Right.
follow it up. Thank
That's
you.
the intent.
That's all.
One more, Emily?
Thank you. So you said we had raised the SDCs. When did that happen?
Well, annually we go through an adjustment for inflation. So all of our so the methodology, as Dan said, we haven't changed the methodology since 2004. But annually we go through an inflationary adjustment.
So does this pay for when you have development, then you have more use of the roads and you have more sidewalks and more traffic lights? So we need it when we have new construction to keep the infrastructure up with that. But then we're giving all these incentives. So how much do the incentives cost, and how much do they take away from the fund that I would assume is matched to the need? It would seem that we're going to have a need if we don't charge this. And how do we fill that?
Well, you're right. So we wouldn't collect everything we would need to fully implement the projects in the project list, and we'd have to make up that funding from elsewhere, either the road fund or grants or some other source. So it's a balance of weighing the desire to incent certain types of development versus fully funding the projects in the transportation system plan.
So we could incentivize and get more development, but then not have the infrastructure to support it.
Or having to fund that infrastructure from other sources.
Which is kind of the same thing. Right. You know, we're going to have to give up something else to match up for these incentives. Right. You know, it's a little iffy to me. And then I'm just wondering, your outreach meetings, what kind of reaction did you get? Because it's a pretty wide group.
I can probably speak to that. Certainly, like from the Neighborhood Leadership Council, there's more interested in, probably the higher the rate, the better for their interests. But like we talked to the chamber and home builders, they were concerned about, making affordable homes still. So, I mean, it was competing interests, so we had different input and feedback.
We were too.
So, any thought of raising the rates to cover the incentives? But then you would have one kind of development paying for another kind of development.
And that part isn't allowed under the statutes. You can not collect the full amount for an incentive, but you can't then burden everyone else with that gap.
I have a problem with that.
See your local legislator.
Okay, we're over, but we have one more, Counselor. I'm hoping you just bear
I'll be
with
quick.
us.
Something Emily said made me want to clarify. The fees that we charge SDCs do not go back to the area where the development necessarily. It goes into a general pot that can be used anywhere, not necessarily where it is being affected, correct?
Say North Eugene.
Yeah, for example. That's it? Just checking.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for waiting so long for that. And I don't know, but we'll ask.
Next step says going to the meeting.
Yeah.
That was really nice. Wow.
Thank you, and we are adjourned.